Hey everyone, this is James from TDB, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about a tea that I have reviewed, but in a review that probably no one remembers from TDB. This is a review I did back in 2015. It was actually Inbetweenisode 33, so pretty early TDB, although we'd been at it for a few years at that point. And the tea I'm talking about is the 2013 Yunnan Sourcing Xiangming. So this is special in a couple ways. First of all, it is a rare example of a tea that I had pretty much aged from when it was quite young. I bought this tea in 2014. Back then it cost $40. Now it costs $143, as you would expect kind of tea to rise. Everyone, there's basically been a series of eras of Pu'erh where everyone's like, oh man, it's getting expensive. And then 5 years from then, you see everything in great hindsight and you realize that it was actually quite cheap at the time. And so that's definitely the case for this tea. And it was recently brought back up to me because my friend Meng went back to Malaysia and he has been storing tea there, and so he finally got a chance after the pandemic has sort of slowed down to go back there and bring some tea back. And so this is a tea that we both had, and so he brought it back and we did the side-by-side comparison there. And so that version of the tea is the one that we brought on to TDB with Denny and reviewed it there. So it's definitely, I think, pretty good Iwu tea. Nothing crazy high end, but solid. This is a solid tea. I liked it back at the time. At one point I did think I was going to drink it pretty regularly, but it turns out I just don't drink young Iwu that much. And it's mostly just a tea that Meng and I both had stored, and to see how the separate storages were going. So when we did the comparison episode, we tried mine first, and it did seem like mine had aged, not a lot, but a fair bit, about what you'd expect for this sort of a storage. And his tea had aged more. And they're both in pretty nice spots. I would personally much rather drink Meng's version of the tea, but I also have sort of a predilection or a preference towards that sort of storage too. But yeah, so now I wanted to try this tea sort of more in a vacuum, just on its own, and see how it's been doing. I did rewatch that Inbetweenisode if you want to see it. It's kind of amusing. I am wearing pajama pants in it. I'm not sure exactly what was going through my head there. I mean, it was nearly 10 years ago at this point. So yeah, let's see how the tea has been doing. So that one was, comparatively very early in my tea journey. Cheers. So this is steep number 1. It's got a good body for an Iwu. Floral, fruity. The nose of it, still, you can smell that kind of buttery floralness that you will sometimes get for young tea. So it's certainly very obviously been dry stored. So steep number 2 here. Going to keep these pretty nice. It's got a really nice soft profile, so very much fitting into kind of the Iwu category of tea. Xiangming is sort of the smaller village, I believe, where it is. Still very floral. That was steep number 1, by the way. Yeah, so has it aged a bit? Yes, I think so. I think the fruitiness and things like that are not things that were as present when I had the tea before. Certainly some of those higher notes, like those floral buttery notes, are things that you would expect would have been there 8 or 9 years ago. And gonna just kind of stack a couple of these steeps here, getting a little bit of kind of like this sugary, brown sugary note on the tea. One episode I also did film recently, and I don't know if I'm releasing this before or after, as I decide the episode schedule after I film usually, is an episode where I talked about when I would be okay, like the sort of the youngest age I'd be okay drinking tea that's sort of semi-aged. And for me at least, the type of tea that I'm okay drinking, so the youngest, once it starts to get those age characteristics, is kind of these boutique Iwu teas. And I decided on that I'd probably drink them at about 6, 7, 8 years of sort of southern China, Taiwan storage, Malaysia. And so that would mean Meng's tea I'd be totally okay having. And having had that tea a couple times, I'd say that's definitely true, and that fits with that sort of tea. With this tea, I think this is still a little young. It's not rough and brash, which is one reason why I think I'd be more okay having it. That being said, could it use some more time to just darken and deepen a bit? I think so. This tea is now 10 years old, maybe 3 or 4 years or so, I'd say. So this tea even loses that floral notes and stuff and moves far more into that brown sugar. There's definitely some tannin still in there, so kind of like this astringency, just a little bit of tartness to it too. Very interesting. Quite different from the first steep still, but yeah, definitely more tannic, I would say. Yeah, and we will reboil for steep number 4. I just want to keep that water really hot. Nose is not terribly interesting, although it has changed each time. And that's something that's probably more true of this than it was when the tea is new. It's just the early steeps will tell you a little more about the storage, and then you're going to kind of, it'll change and evolve for the first few steeps before it sort of settles in. So this is steep number 4 I'm doing here. I'm definitely going faster than I normally would on this sort of tea because I am filming an episode. And it is certainly pleasant enough. I like these Yiwu teas because they have this sort of softer profile, but they also have a bit more going on, in my opinion, that in an engaging way than like Northern tea, for instance. Yep, pretty consistent now on the nose. So, a little floral, but it's not decked out with super high notes. It's not very grassy or anything like that. Those floral notes really just came out on the initial smells as well as the first steep. Cheers. Yeah, now the tea is really dominated with this sort of brown sugar note. There's a little bit of fruitiness to it, but I'd say that is a little bit less prominent. There's a little bit of woodiness to it too. Having had a couple of Monghai Tea Factory teas recently, the woodiness is definitely of a pretty different nature than those. And certainly not like those, but there's like a nice softness to it, but like a good body as well. So it very much fits into the Yiwu category of tea. This is definitely one that I think if I did have it blind, would be pretty easy to peg as sort of an Yiwu tea. Okay. And we will wrap up on this last infusion. Leaves, now that they are getting wet, show kind of maybe sort of an olive green, getting a little darker, but still not totally there. Yeah, and the tea has a little bit more tannins and things like that to smooth out that I think could be sort of fuel to age a bit more. I don't think this is close to being overaged or anything like that. I think it could use a few years just to round out its profile. Cheers. Yeah, so more or less more of the same. Tea is still not getting too bitter. There's a little bit of bitterness in there, but compared to the factory teas I've been filming with recently, it's very, very minimal. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate everyone following. Let me know how you like this episode. If you like these with me kind of going into the back storage and pulling stuff out, I think this is one that I'm going to be putting back in there and maybe revisiting in a few more years to see if I'm ready to drink it regularly. I have enough access to teas I enjoy regularly that I'm not necessarily looking for something new to put in there. And I think this tea could benefit from the extra time. So probably not one I will be revisiting for a while. So thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.